in the Philadelphia Country Club. Like Herb said, an expert maybe in design and restoration, and William Flynn, Ron Forse and I together, Flynn did not have a huge body of work. It's about 52 courses. We're fortunate enough over the years to have consulted over 12 of those, and some of those being his best work. Especially, the Philadelphia market. William Flynn grew up in Massachusetts, moved to Philly, and his body of work in the Philadelphia area is absolutely incredible. You can say that Cherry Valley in Colorado is very highly rated, but some say you pick up Cherry Valley, or Cherry Hills, sorry, pick up Cherry Hills and put it in Philadelphia, and it's not the course that everybody thinks it is, because there's such a great body of work and representative work here of William Flynn. I told Janine this morning, I really had a lot of fun putting this together, because as a golf course architect, we are always touching on the history and looking at the history of a club, looking at old photos, and trying to understand their design principles. But to just take time away from all the work that we've been doing here and on other projects and just totally focus on Flynn and his writings. Everything you're going to see here today comes directly from William Flynn and what he wrote. He wrote an article in 1927 for the USGA, and it was all about his design philosophies and his theories on construction. So literally, that's where I pulled the information from, plus other newspaper articles. But and then applying them to, okay, what was he doing at Philadelphia Country Club? So it was a wonderful exercise for me for the last couple of weeks to just kind of take some time out, put some drawings aside, and pull this information out. So really enjoyed this. So William Flynn, born in 1890 in Milton, Mass., childhood friend of Francis. We met one time, part owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. You can see he designed his first course at age 19. I think many of us who were golfers were designing courses at age 19, but we were just doing it on a piece of paper. He was doing it in the ground. Assisted Hugh Wilson in the construction of Marion. Pete Trenums, who's here, he and I were just talking, and he said, Pete, you said it was a 1951? Or the article you were talking about, with no mention of Hugh Wilson with the amateur.
Oh, 1950, Marion.
Yeah, 1950. The program for the U.S. Amateur, where there's very little mention of Hugh Wilson for Marion, but a lot of William Flynn. And I think, Flynn was the superintendent, first superintendent, which oftentimes when someone was the superintendent at a club in that era, they oftentimes were the one who built it. A couple clubs in the area, Chester Valley and Concord, they actually had, they dismissed their architect, which Concord was William Flynn, and the superintendent took over the complete implementation of the plans. And so that happened often in the 1920s. So we could see and truly believe that, Flynn had a very heavy hand in the work at Marion. Authored several articles for the USGA Green Section, Architecture and Agronomy. Flynn was really one of the first in the industry who was sort of that architect, builder, superintendent, but was also involved in the development of maintenance practices, grasses, all of these different things. Research, Flynn was involved in so many different things. Carried out construction of holes 12 and 15 with the assistance of Charles Allison after the death of George Crump. I believe, and you'll see later, the 12th hole at Pine Valley is something that you find on a lot of Flynn courses. Not the exact replication of it, but the design principles. Single-digit handicap player, joined Howard Toomey after World War I. Toomey being an engineer, assisted with construction and helped with all of his processes. He was heavily influenced by Marion, Pine Valley, some of the early Massachusetts golf courses, I would believe, the Country Club being one of those. So, Golf Week has now changed and gone to their top 200, but you can see, where Flynn ranks among those, with Shinnecock Hills being his highest ranked course, the Country Club, Lancaster, and then, Cherry Hills, Indian Creek, Bowling Green, Philly, Lehigh. I mean, there's a big lumping right there of 3 Philly area or Gap clubs, and then Huntington Valley and Manny's, and always fun Atlantic City Country Club. Regional courses, Atlantic City, Bala, Concord, Country Club of Harrisburg, Green Valley. Green Valley was actually Flynn's his course. He had designed it as a public facility. We have plans where it was the 18-hole course, and then overlaid on top of that, they were just slamming in this housing development. I mean, just probably like 50 by 150 foot wide lots. So he looked at developing Green Valley. During the Depression, when work really slowed down, he brought his associates back, William Gordon, Dick Wilson, Red Lawrence, these other guys that were out building courses for him. He brought them back and employed them at Green Valley during the Depression to keep them going. Huntington Valley, Lancaster, Lafayette Hills, Lehigh, Manny's, Plymouth, Rolling Green, Springdale, Princeton, Woodcrest, and then major renovations. He really did a lot of work at Springhaven, obviously Marion and Manor Country Club, and he did some work at Gulf Mills. The interesting thing with Concord Country Club, we've been working there for a number of years, and yes, you know, they had other architects come in over the years. They sold off land to State Farm, and we're doing everything we can to actually put more Flynn back in there. It's now open for play, but the old continuously arcing 14th hole, that par 5, that's been done away with. We've redesigned a very much Flynn-inspired 400-yard uphill par 4. This summer I'll be going up to Shinnecock because we're building a new par 3 that is inspired, not a replication, but inspired by the famous 11th hole, the par 3 at Shinnecock. And so then other things will be changing on the course. So Concord, we're really trying to put Flynn back in there. We call it the Philly School of William Flynn. You have Hugh Wilson and George Crump doing Pine Valley, Hugh Wilson doing Marion. With that, you then have the team of William Flynn and Howard Toomey, plus George Thomas, who did a little bit of work on the east, and then he took off for the West Coast, Riviera, other courses out there. And then you get Tillinghast, and Tillinghast, you know, grew up here in the Philly area and has a number of courses, and then had a prolific career throughout the United States. But from that, you get this tree of individuals who in some ways, even though we show Gil Hance down here, who's much younger, his influence, the influence that he gained from growing up in the Philly area, shows up in his architecture. But especially now, even with Flynn, you have William and David Gordon. You also have Dick Wilson. Dick Wilson then taught, you know, Joe Lee, Bob Simmons, and Robert Von Hagge, and all of these other guys. And Kelly Moran, who lives over in Reading, worked for Robert Von Hagge. So you can still see, if you were to go study some of that, you can see some of their architecture. The greatest trip I've actually ever had as a golf architect, you know, we've had trips to some of the best courses in the country. It was actually, we work at Indian Creek, we work at Pine Tree, and we work at another place called Boca Rio. Indian Creek was designed from scratch by William Flynn with Dick Wilson on the construction crew. Wilson goes and builds Pine Tree. Pine Tree, Wilson at this time is a raging drunk. And it's a shame, he died at Pine Tree. He died in Tom Paul's dad's bungalow at Pine Tree. Robert Von Hagge goes and builds Pine Tree. Then he goes and builds Boca Rio. The architectural evolution, you could be at Boca Rio and you could see the influence of Indian Creek through Pine Tree in there. So for me personally as an architect, that was a great opportunity. We worked at all 3 of those golf courses. But so Flynn's influence is still seen in architecture today. His influence can still be seen in turf care and maintenance also. Mike had never worked for the Valentine family. That's Joe Valentine to the right there, or to Flynn's right or left. And you know, with what Flynn was doing at Marion early on, and Valentine's picked right up with and started doing, they would be involved with research. They were the go-to people in the area. We have records of Joe Valentine going and consulting at courses all over the area. And sometimes it was on design and construction. Then from Joe Valentine, you have Richie Valentine. And there's guys who are superintendents in the area that work for Richie Valentine, people in the industry. So you still have some direct relations there to Flynn and his on the turf side. For me personally, I have 3 plans, whether I'm working on a Ross plan, a Tillinghast plan, or whatever, there's 3 plans that I have that are go-to for me, okay? Indian Creek's plan, Shinnecock, and Philly. The reason I go to them, even if I'm working on other plans or other designs from other architects, it's because the design principles of these three courses to me are some of the best that I've ever had the opportunity to study or work on. What's interesting about Indian Creek is he had a blank slate. So if you were ever to play a golf course and study a golf course that Flynn was involved with, this island did not exist. This 366-acre island did not exist when Toomey and Flynn became involved. They created this. We have the grading plans, we have the designs, everything. It is Flynn with a blank slate. No influence of land. He created the land. And so there are times when we've pulled features off of Indian Creek and put them elsewhere. There's a mound to the to the right side of the lower green on 18 at Manning's. That came right off of Indian Creek. So just a great, great golf course. Everybody knows Shinnecock. And even the bunker shapes that are on these plans are absolutely phenomenal. So William Flynn and his comment about the design of Philadelphia Country Club. As to the layout, the primary thought was to design a course giving strategy and skill in shot placement first consideration without emphasis on force as the important factor. Skill and strategy and not how far you hit the ball. I think it's important. Due to extensive use of natural topographical hazards, the necessity of introducing artificial directional traps and bunkers in the construction was kept to a minimum. I like that, because you guys have a lot of bunkers. So what is his definition of minimum? I kind of wondered that. Sufficient of these, however, have been employed to indicate a correct mode of play, offering an incentive, and providing a reward for high-class golf. I like that, high-class golf. There's a lot in there. It talks about strategy, it talks about skill, high-class golf, reward, incentive, all of these things to, as you'll see later in some writings, basically keep you engaged while you play. Not just driver, wedge, driver, 7-iron. He makes you think about what you're doing throughout the round. Design characteristics. Some would say, and Ron and I both agree, that he was a routing genius. Just think about the golf courses in the Philadelphia market and the difference in some of the routings, and I think that's what makes the Flynn courses distinct in this area, is because he changes up his routings. He knew how to use the land better than anyone else. So many of his courses might be routed, high, low, high. Manny's, he actually stepped the holes up the slope. He didn't go with the slope. I think his only deficiency or his only failure may have been plans for the Country Club of York. Okay, Country Club of York hired he and Donald Ross to do plans. They obviously chose Ross, whether that was because of Lancaster or just the region and they wanted to have a Ross course. But when you look at the routing plans, Ross went with the property, and Flynn on that one actually went from high, low, high. He had all these stream crossings, and if you've looked at the land at York, where there are outside of the playing corridors, that would have been one heck of a walking course. Oh my gosh. Up, down, up. I mean, it would have, by the end of the 18 holes, you would have been worn out. So, variety of play. The principal thought in designing a course is to produce 18 interesting holes with a variety of play. A course which has a variety of play and character in its natural state can readily be made even more interesting by the installation of a limited number of man-made hazards. So he's utilizing the natural topography first before he's even thinking about anything else. And that's the sign of a good architect. Selecting proper green sites. A lot of people play a golf course, everybody plays it from tee to green. But when you start a golf course, or if you study a golf course, you got to start from green to tee. Okay? Because oftentimes they were selecting the green sites first and routing the holes to match those green sites, and then starting with the designs of those greens. And Flynn oftentimes would start with the design and come back and then say, you know what, this is how they're playing the hole, this is where we want to add a bunker, we should do this, we should do that. The most important point in designing golf holes is to select proper green sites. The first condition in selecting a green site is its adaptability to the game on a particular type of hole. The second is the question of the cost of constructing a green on any particular site. The third is beauty, beauty to be had both in the background and the vistas. I like that, vistas, something a lot of clubs have lost. Just a photo, you can see the selection. I love this because the selection of the two green sites at 11 and 16. You know, you come over that hill on 16 and you're looking down and the sun's off. What a great view! Or looking at 11 from the tee shot. Wonderful, wonderful side-by-side greens. Note the irregular bunkering and the irregular sand lines, the irregular lines on some of the bunkering. Selecting green sites. I'm not sure if anybody selected 3 better green sites in this area than 16, 8, and 11 at Manny's. And that's all, you know, that's Flynn. And the one thing, last night was their Iron Horse tournament, and I was staying close to the club. I was thinking of driving over about 9:30 last night when people were feeling pretty good, telling them to cut down this tree right here. Everybody photographs this hole. As soon as you cut down that dawn redwood, your view of 11, the quarry that is to the left of 11 is phenomenal. Next time you play over at Manny's, if there's a gap event or you're just playing, go look down over there. They cut that one tree down and it is spectacular. This is that, again, finding the green sites. One of the best par 3s in tournament golf, one of the hardest. They call it the best short par 4. Indian Creek, again, he was able to do this from scratch, but he talked about beauty, the vistas, location. Unfortunately, they had to do some plantings because of the buildings behind there now, but you know, wonderful, wonderful golf course. Sequence of holes. During the tying in sequence, what you're missing is he was talking about the routing and everything. So now he says, I'm back at the office. The architect has to go back to the office and take all of his plans and notes. During the tying in sequence, the architect always has in mind the question of the sequence of the various types, taking care not to have holes of similar length and character coming too closely together. The most interesting course is one where the lengths and types of holes are broken up, where 2 or 3 drive and pitch holes, or any other type for that matter, do not follow one another. So he's basically saying, listen, you know, you want to go par 3, par 4, long par 4, short par 4, par 5, par 3. He wants to break up the round so it's not the same. Sameness was something he despised. So this is the original routing, okay? And when you look at the original routing, there was really good variety throughout the golf course. You know, so basically the routing is 14, 15, 16, 17, the 18th hole that plays to your current practice putting green, okay? Then you get 10, 11, 12, and 13. Obviously, where the old clubhouse was, you started with, and then you came back, then you come back on 10, with being number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then pick up 1, 2, 3. So interesting routing. I played yesterday. I actually was almost going to tee off on 14 and play the original routing, but knowing you guys had the 6 o'clock men's group, I just said, just try and sneak in anywhere I can. The reason I show Lancaster Country Club's 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th hole is Flynn just went into contrast with what he just said. Sameness, lengths of holes. Now, this was forced upon him. Lancaster Country Club, all the holes were originally on the upper ground. Then they crossed over to Conestoga because prominent early members and founders of the club, they felt they wanted to put some houses next to the 13th hole, so they bought some land, traded with the club. But he says same clubs, you know, drive and pitch, which these are short holes, but he also took advantage of the land, and not one of these looks the same. So at least there's great contrast in how they look. Tom Doak, when I asked him, why was Lancaster rated as one of your gourmet choices in your first book, The Confidential Guide? He really said that Lancaster has everything that he ever learned about Flynn in one. And especially he loved the short par 4s, even though they're one after another. So we really start to see Flynn developing this strong ability of creating great short par 4s. Okay? Bunkering was simple, not flashy, but strategically placed. Most courses have entirely too many traps that are badly placed and poorly constructed. That costs too much money to maintain and whose removal would help the average player improve appearances, reduce upkeep, and practically leave the star player unaffected. Because so often, you know, if you're a really good player, you're not seeing the bunkers in fronts of greens, or you're not seeing this bunker, that bunker, because you know you can play around it. But the average player sees it, that's for sure. It is important in locating fairway bunkers to place them in positions where they are visible, also are visible. Very important, you know, if you think about it, you go around your course, how many blind bunker shots are there? I can't think of any. Unless you're a really, really long hitter, you get downslope 116. I don't know if there's anybody that, you know, does that, but for the most part, everything's visible. It is important in locating fairway bunkers to place them in positions where they're also visible. If it is concealed, it does not register on the player's mind as he is about to play the shot and thus loses its value. The best looking bunkers are those that are gouged out of faces or slopes, particularly when the slope faces the player. They are very, very much more effective in that they stand out like sentinels, beckoning the player to come on or keep to the right or left. That's just great, you know?
That is great.
And you know, you have that here. Again, you know, building bunkers on the ground that's falling away from you is very hard. He really is cutting bunkers. Everything's in on an upslope. It makes it easy. Now, the challenge is, and this is what we've had to address the last couple of years, is like on holes 10 and 17 and 14, a little bit on 13, is that back in the day, they could care less if a 4-inch rain came through and washed out a bunker. They didn't care. Now, standards have changed. So now we've had to, as we've rebuilt some bunkers, we have to make sure we can keep water from going into them. The new system, the new construction system that you'll see out on Centennial is better Billy. If some water gets in there, shouldn't be a problem. You might get a little bit of a washout, but not like what you see now. It is not wise to attempt to design a complete bunkering system for the course in the beginning. But the framework bunkering plan can be worked out as the course is played and a complete scheme developed more satisfactorily and to better advantage. Flynn came back in preparation for the Open at 39. He was here, letters show, 37 and 38. And he was planning new bunkers. And so those positions of those bunkers were based on how players were playing the holes, better players, but they were things that were implemented prior to the Open in 39, and many of those features are still here today. His daughter indicated that he used to literally would go out onto a property and just sit and just kind of watch and feel the ground and just look and see how people were playing, and they would take Sunday lunches and go to some of the courses and just watch. And then he'd be making recommendations on changes and how to play certain holes. You know, 17. There's 17 in 1939 and 17 just a couple years ago, you know, where we added another bunker because of the way things were changing. But we also had to build up the faces to keep the water out. You'll notice the tee, that was the original tee that they used for the Open down there too. Cutting things in, natural topography. Anybody who was a part of the process would be happy to know my drive went out to the right where the old bunker was, which I recommended its removal. I had an easy wedge into the green. It was front, you know, it was like 6 paces on. I hit my wedge 5 paces on, and I was chipping back on from back left. So all the things I heard about, I got to experience last night. Great bunkering on hole number 1, but natural, very visible. I mean, there's some bunkers where you see a small ribbon of sand, but you still see the sand. Very important to Flynn. Water hazards. One natural hazard, however, which is more or less of a nuisance, is water. This not merely as when it parallels play and forms a picturesque landscape feature on the course, but when water is between the objective, the green or driving area, and the player may be the man who plays only a foot short of the objective, is much worse off than the one who makes a very poor shot that does not reach the water. Water hazards absolutely prohibit the recovery shot, perhaps the best shot in the game. On the other hand, how valuable these streams are when the greens and fairways need water. So in some ways, he's saying he's against water, but in certain situations, he'll take it. I would think he would, because here, 5, 6, you cross over it on 11. He didn't design it around the stream, but it's there. But you have the pond on 17. Lancaster, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12. Manny's 2, 3, 5, 9, 10, 11, 17, 18. Lehigh. But again, they're picturesque. They do create strategy. I think one of the best water crossings is is the 8th. The 8th at Rolling Green on the tee shot. We expanded the fairway to get as close to those hazards as possible. You can carry it down the right side, or you can play to the left and stay short. The 4th at Lancaster, you're crossing it twice. The 5th at Lancaster, the more time I've spent at the 5th at Lancaster, and the way that thing is on a diagonal, that little Stauffer run, that is such a nasty little pin placement when he puts it out there to the right. Just pure genius in how he used the streams there. So he was not afraid of using it, even though he kind of talked about, maybe in some instances, not using it much. Your 6th hole was never designed with the pond. It was a stream the whole way down. But again, as irrigation started coming into play, you needed water holding areas. So it was obvious to go ahead and put the pond in on 6. It was a great spot. Tees. The placing of tees requires considerable thought, and they also should be designed to fit in and blend with the landscape. A great many players that advert, this is interesting, this is 1927. A great many players are adverse to using forward tees, perhaps because they were originally christened ladies' tees. But regardless of that fact, it seems that a great deal more enjoyment could be had if golfers used the tees on the various holes that really suited their game. We men are very proud, and sometimes we don't want to move up, but we really should, and the game is that much more enjoyable. He actually went on to say in this article on 27, he said this is a little card that should be placed in every locker room at every club, and it was basically to say, just play the tee that you think you should play to enjoy the game. That's what we want to do, enjoy the game. So it's very interesting, because these are things we're still dealing with to this day.
Jim, are the tees that we have, were they original, all these tees, or were they added over on, like the back tees added?
Flynn and other guys, they would basically build like one runway tee, and all of the tee markers were typically on that, and then maybe sometimes they would have a more forward tee, but for the most part, courses were designed with maybe 2 to 3 tees. Your plan even shows that, and the early photos show that. But the advent of the 5, 6, in some places 7 tees, it's just to accommodate all the different levels of players that we have now. And we are, more and more we're seeing tees going up into fairways and actually building raised portions of fairways, because we're trying to encourage, first of all, introducing new players to the game. Shorter courses are better, more fun play. So there's many different reasons for that. But yeah, we have a lot of them. Sorry, trees. It might also be that moving a tee slightly to the right or to the left precludes the necessity of taking out some beautiful tree. This also applies to green sites. Sometimes a slight change in the alignment of the hole permits the architect to keep a specimen tree or trees, which also may act as a key or turning point in the hole. So he was not adverse to finding those specimen trees and keeping some of those trees, or making an adjustment in the field to keep that particular tree. What's interesting here is you can look at, here's the beautiful elm tree to the left of 14, or 3, sorry, 3. You also have some trees that were guarding the 13th hole, okay, but up at the green. Interestingly enough, 16, you actually had like you were hitting through these 2 goalposts that were at the top of the hill. They were massive trees. Now, this is interesting. You have the Finnegan tree, but here on 6, you had 2 trees, but they were further out, shorter. They were actually before the crossing stream, okay? And the stream was actually out here, not up against the edge of the fairway. And then you can see even on 18, again, he routed the hole. Oftentimes these were old property line trees. And you can see sometimes in that straight line. So he routed your course using trees.
So what happens if I mean, trees obviously grow over time. So you have a hole that Flynn laid out, now we have a tree that's growing, it's become so big, it literally changes the hole. You know, a good example of that could be on maybe 16, when that tree got so big, it was out almost in the fairway, and now all of a sudden you almost had to play a left or right shot versus, you know. So would you recommend that we, you know, take those out so we keep the integrity of the hole, or?
I think you have to look at the design intent, okay? And sometimes it might be that, yes, you need to take down a tree, but if you want to restore the design intent, maybe it's the right tree, right place. In other words, so often the thought of trees was, well, they're only this big now. You don't think 80 years down the road how much bigger that is really going to get. So yeah, you have to look at it on a hole-by-hole basis and make a determination of what is the best thing to do for that hole. Trees become very controversial because people become attached to them. They love them. They're beautiful. But sometimes you got to take the tree to sacrifice the tree for conditions of the course or the playability. And so we see that a lot. And you know, there are a number of holes where they fought us on taking the trees down because they think the course is going to become too easy. We are very hard pressed to say that we found a project where there's been an extensive tree removal and the course got that much easier. You guys were ahead of the curve. I mean, you really were in terms of the tree management within the Philadelphia market. You guys were doing extensive tree removal in 1999 to 2004. You guys really went hard at it. You can't stop though. There's so many layers to a tree management program. And here's where your tree program started. It might be hard to read. This is from April 28th, 1938. Plantings. The chairman reported that a maple and some evergreens had been planted at the 5th tee, evergreen back of the 4th hole, and evergreens and deciduous trees between the fairways on the first 2 holes. Also, 4,000 seedling evergreens have been ordered at $25 for the lot. 4,000. For 25 bucks.
My
What a deal.
Yes, what a deal. We're not gonna, it didn't cost 25 bucks to take them down either. So you can see, and there's very little thought given into the placement of those trees oftentimes. Now, when you see some photos, you can see where they were planting these, okay? They were starting to go in between holes in pockets, but they also were starting to go in other areas along the sides of holes. Okay. And here's Manny's. Manny's also fell into that same thing. Public Works project at Manny's. Thousands of evergreen trees were planted. Not as well as you guys did. They just lined every hole. I mean, it was nasty. And again, most of those have come down. Rolling green, again, this is just an example though of Flynn using trees, utilizing them. Not just cutting them down, but routing holes. That 18th hole gets routed right through that whole wooded section. 15 through the wooded section. Okay, greens, again, this is his philosophy on greens design, not just routing and where they should be located. In constantly designing greens, it is very easy for an architect to acquire a pet type and to apply this frequently, thus creating greens of great similarity. A tremendous amount of study must be given each green site on the ground and also on paper so as to get distinctive types, thus avoiding sameness. The length of the shot to the green as well as the bunkering scheme of the hole must be considered in the design of each green. In other words, how's that going to be received? Where are the bunkers? Are you going to carry a bunker and the ball rolls away? All these different things. Care must be taken so that in the main body of the green there shall be sufficient cup space. A very important consideration when the wear and tear of the green is considered as limited cup areas increases wear. Same thing we face today. These guys were thinking about it in 27. But here again, he talks about sameness, that could create greens of similarity, and Flynn, and then he talked about, an architect acquire a pet type and apply this frequently, okay? We don't have the design of the 5th green, so this is 9 of 17 greens at Philly. Now, there is sameness and a frequency to repeat a tendency. Flynn would design greens with 3 high points. but those 3 high points rotated on the dial all the time. And one might be higher, you know, number 1 might be high back on one hole, but one might be a low front on another. It might be outside the green or it might be inside the green. A great study here, you know, like I said, 9 greens, all of them have 3 high points. So the next time you're playing, go and look and see if you can see if you can count the 3 high points. Now here's the difference. Your 18th green. Gordon's adopted that same philosophy of the 3 high points. Next time you're playing a place like Old York Road or Whitford or something like that, count the high points. Now they'll throw a 4th one in there, they'll have 2, they're rotated on the dial, but what the Gordons did is they took those high points and went even higher. So Flynn had great simplicity in his designs. Think about your 18th green and those undulations. Those undulations are more severe than the rest of your course. The Gordons. They took that philosophy and modified it. Naturalness and visibility. The most important consideration in conjunction with designing of a green is to create naturalness. Naturalness should apply on, I love this, because naturalness should apply on all construction, on all golf courses, greens, tees, mounds, and bunkers alike. Wayne Morrison and Tommy Paul called their book The Nature Faker, because Flynn was so good at blending things in, melding them in with nature. The drive, with the exception of the carry or accuracy required, is practically similar on each hole, and securing visibility of the area played to is not nearly as important as securing visibility for the shot to the green on any type of hole. He was not adverse to a blind tee shot, number 2, but he wanted you to see the target, the green. You can at least see the pin, you see the fronting bunkers on number 2. He gives you visibility, tells you where it's at. But the tee shot is some kind of blind up there to the top. They were not adverse to blind tee shots. Robert Trent Jones comes in the 50s and starts raising all the tees because he wants to give golfers confidence by being able to see where they're hitting. Country Club Buffalo, we lowered tees left and right that Jones picked up because they didn't mind the blind tee shot. However, it is not always possible. I'm sorry, the drive with the, I stopped here, okay. The green is the final objective, and how can a man reach the objective satisfactorily if he cannot see it? Blind tee shot on 17, the green opens up beautifully to you. However, it is not always possible to have visibility of every green, but the hole that does not have a visible green should have some other feature or indicator which tells the player where to go get the best results. So you could use a bunker. The width of that bunker might be an indication on the width of the green. So you know, I gotta stay between that bunker.
Well, 15 is a good example of that, right?
Yeah, well, I think
That's a blind green.
15. So he gives you, and the thing about it is though, he does give you that little false front, so you can see the front of the green. Remember for years, everybody planted trees behind greens for depth perception and this and that? These guys built it in. Oftentimes, if you didn't see the front of the green, you might not see the front, but maybe they raised a mound at the back. So you could actually see the mound. So they gave you, here's your area that you need to hit to. And yes, he gave you definition along this edge. Hit over this. And then he defines the outside. Okay? Your drive shot, your tee ball on 2, followed by, the width of the green is still defined by high points and shoulders. This was naturalness. Again, he cut this in on this. This was probably just a continuous slope down, but he does a beautiful job of cutting it in and filling. He just was a master at just making things fit in beautifully. Fairways. The topography of the ground should have a bearing in the outlining of the fairways, they being designed with the idea of producing character rather than the commonplace straight line of a decade ago. A curving line, whether it be a road or the outline of a fairway, is much more attractive than the straight line. Oftentimes, just like greens have shrunken over the years, so too have fairways. You might have a fairway that, ground that's sweeping down and goes to flat and continues to move. Well, fairways have narrowed now. Oftentimes, they're just on the flat. A lot of our master plans deal with expanding fairways out, so now you see this rolling topography, and that line is much more interesting than a straight line. Lancaster's third hole here was a plan done by Flynn. You see the straight line. Okay, then we went and we implemented the plan. You can see it during construction and how all of a sudden it's much more interesting as it's sweeping in on the land. Now, fairways, there were some fairway expansions done here in the master plan that was developed in early 2000s when you guys regressed and greens were expanded. But the irrigation system, there were some limitations on what could be done here at Philly because your irrigation system was what, 5 years old at the time? The club was not really, had an appetite to say, well, we're going to expand fairways, and oh, by the way, this 5-year-old system, we're going to modify this and get the system out to where it should be to match the fairways. So there's still some fairway expansions could be done here. Shortest cut of grass as close to the hazards as possible. Look at the distance between the bunker and the fairway. Okay, so some holes, things were not implemented. 15 or 18 is a great example. I've spent a lot of time on this hole, and you want to get some of these carries, the risk and the rewards, get the fairways closer. So the old photos, there is no doubt in the old photos we had wider fairways. Do we recommend going back to 120, 130 foot wide fairways? No, you'll never get there. But in some areas you want to expand the fairways so you're enhancing that risk and reward. If you carry a bunker, you shouldn't be in rough. If you play close to a bunker, and you should be in the bunker, not in the rough. Par 3 holes, perhaps the majority of players enjoy the one-shot holes on any course better than the longer ones, and the architect should be careful to get distinctive short holes of proper length. There's no doubt Flynn was a master at developing wonderful par 3s. Okay, and you guys have just a great set of par 3s here, of varying lengths, elevation, some playing flat, some downhill, some uphill, just great par 3s. Long par 3s. He really was an advocate for long par 3s. Manny's, this used to be a dogleg par 3 till USGA and Forse recommended taking it. It had Dawn Redwoods out to here, 230 yard, dogleg par 3. He designed this at 250 yards in 1926, uphill. It's brutal. 223, uphill. In some ways, and I was looking at it, in some ways the 15th here is kind of a reverse of this. It's a little bit shorter. He actually gives you an out. You can miss here, you can miss short right and play onto the green. But what I like about this one, you can miss short left, which I did last night. But the shot to the green, you get a little bit of an upslope, and then that green starts to fall away. And it's a deceptive little shot if you miss left. It's not an easy up and down like that. Design characters, excellent short par 4s, equally spectacular and challenging long par 4s. I was talking to Pete earlier about this. 10 at Marion used to play straight across the street. Then they changed it. Okay, and when they changed it, Flynn was involved with that. Flynn was also involved at Pine Valley. I'd love to see, I need to see chronologically, I believe Pine Valley came first. The 12th hole is one of the best short par 4s anywhere. Okay? The influence of that hole, I believe, can be seen in Marion's 10th. And if it's Marion's 10th, it's Philly's first. It's not just Philly's. It's not just Philly's first. It's Indian Creek's 7th. It's Lancaster's 16th. It's Cherry Hill's 7th. It's Pepper Pike's 2nd. Rolling Green's 5th. It's Huntington Valley's 4th. Short par 4, dog leg. Trick is in the green. Francisco Molinari, when he won the US Am, Tommy Paul and I were standing just outside fairway. He had a 55-yard shot. Pin was on the left side of 10 at Pine Valley. We're sitting there listening to he and his caddy. They went through 4 different shot options. This guy is now one of the best golfers in the world, and they were perplexed at that one hole. Your green, I believe, was changed because the thing about this green was, if you notice these arrows here going away, somewhat deceptive, that if you played along the left, you'd think that's the better shot coming in, but now all of a sudden the green was falling away from you. And yet the front was moving away and slightly to the left. So you really had to play for position on that hole, which on a short par 4, strategy is critical, and the shot into the green. So it just, for years I've been studying these holes and where possible, not replicating, but being influenced by the design of these particular holes. And in fact, if you look at the bunkering on yours and the bunkering on 16 at Lancaster, I mean, I was influenced by this. I just got some email last night that Gap is putting together the best 18 holes. 16 at Lancaster made it. I didn't get to see. Philly's in there. I didn't get to see in the email. It was on my phone. It was cut off. I didn't get to see what holes from Philly made it in there, but they're in there. The long par 4s. Lancaster 10th, par 4, uphill, 450 yards. Lancaster 18th, which I think is one of the best finishing holes at a club, private club, 435, uphill with that wonderful green. Manny's, 450 design. I say, yeah, hole 3, 450. That's now back to 480, tournament play. Concord's 18th is going to be converted. The bunker right here is going to be taken out. This is going to be 480 downhill, par 4. Flynn designed it originally as the first hole was a long par 4. Okay? So, in terms of Philly, it would have been the original 8th. Your 12th hole was designed as the long par 4. You're kind of missing that a little bit now. I mean, it still plays long, but you're kind of missing that real tough, long par 4. And there might be thoughts on that at some other point, but that's one thing that is missing.
I don't feel so bad.
Because I think I'm not real long off the tee, but I know I had 5 iron in on 9, I had 5 iron in on 17, and I can't remember what I hit in on 12. Anyway, design characters par 5s. It was formerly thought that each course should have a 3-shotter in each 9. Today, however, the thought prevails that one good 3-shotter is sufficient unless some outstanding natural feature warrants putting in a second. What's that say? To me, when I read that, par's irrelevant. 72 doesn't matter. 71 doesn't matter. If the ground needs or provides that wonderful par 5, then you do it. If the course has 1 par 5, great. It doesn't need 4. You don't need 4 par 3s and 4 par 5s. It's whatever the ground allows, whatever it provides. He didn't care about that. Great par 5. I hit a drive just out to the left. I had a little over 200 to carry the bunker on the left. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play the hole the way he designed and moving around the features, and I just caught the very tip of the bunker, rolled back in. Now I had that very difficult shot out of this bunker up to that green. So I think this is one of the best designed holes in the area in terms of a par 5 and the strategies and the land and what the land is doing, and then the green. Just a wonderful par 5, and it employs so many of his design principles. Shot from behind. Here you can see, you need to get some fairway expansion here on the carry side of this. Get that fairway out through here, running it closer to the bunkers. Maybe look at these 2 oaks, but expanding fairway on the carry side of these bunkers. There's nothing wrong with even widening down through here where that ground's falling harder. If someone tries to play away and position into here, they're trying to play away from the hazards, let the slope of the ground and the width of the fairway also be a factor of what's going to, the results that they might have. Thoughts on distance? 1927. Keep this in mind as we're talking distance. This is 1927. Again, the question of the ball has a great bearing on what type a certain length hole will be. Time was, and not many years ago, when a 400 yard long, when a hole 400 yards long on average ground was a good 2-shot hole for the star players. Now, the same hole is perhaps a drive and a spade for the better class of golfers. All architects will be a lot more comfortable when the powers that be in golf finally solve the ball problem. 1927. A great deal of experimentation is now going on, and it is to be hoped that before long a solution will be found to control the distance of the elusive pill. 1927.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
They still have not
Keep
solved.
hoping.
You know, they saw it. Back then, it was hickory shafts to steel. It was, the ball was changing, everything was changing. And he even talks about the athlete. Actually, it's in the letters from being exchanged between Philadelphia Country Club, the USGA, and others. He's talking about it's a different athlete now. He calls golfers athletes. They practice more. Things were changing then. We now have different athletes. He even says, during the last decade, there has been continuous improvement in the golf ball. Also, the modern club has been made much more powerful and effective by changes in the swinging weight and improvements in the steel shaft. And he goes on to say, and this is, these are exchanges, again, between USGA, Philadelphia Country Club, and William Flynn. In addition, a new class of golf, and he even has an edit here, amateur and professional, has developed. So they saw these changes coming. This is in '38, so this is 11 years after that previous one. Nobody solved it, they're still talking about it. Golf Committee report to the Board of Governors, May 1937. Mr. Flynn, who was the architect for the Spring Mill course, went over it May 17th and made several suggestions for its improvement. He feels that with our opportunities and our basic plan, a few refinements will give us the best course in Philadelphia. This excludes Pine Valley. The improvement would be comparatively inexpensive. Flynn's recommendations were to add traps to 9 holes and lengthen 8 holes. Things still go on today. And most of those, bunker right side of 8, that was added. It's not there now, but there was a bunker on the outside left of 17, helped define and turn the hole. Short bunker left on 14, that was added. The bunker on 13, which was reinstated a couple years ago, that was added. So there were a number of areas where he added some bunkers, and again, lengthened holes, okay? So for the 39 Open, what that meant was all this talk of length, you guys played it at basically 68.50 par 69, okay? Par 69 for a US Open.
Wow.
That was because he was, and Ed Dudley, who was the pro, he was hitting too many of what were designed as to be 3-shotters. He was hitting them in 2. So your par 5s were converted to par 4s. So, design characteristics and a summary of an ideal golf course by William Flynn. The principal consideration of the architect is to design his course in such a way as to hold the interest of the player from the first tee to the last green, and to present the problems of the various holes in such a way that they register in the player's mind as he stands on the tee or on the fairway for the shot to the green. The best way to whet the appetite and improve the game of any golfer is to offer an incentive and provide a reward for high-class play, and high-class play is meant simply the best of which each individual is capable. Let's go out and play. No, I mean, it says that every player, we all have something in us to play really good golf. Maybe it's 2 shots out of, in an 18-hole round, but boy, how good do you feel when you hit those 2 good shots? You know, so much has gone on over the years that people lengthened courses because they want to defend against the long hitters. That was benefiting 5% of your membership, if that. Might benefit at some clubs 5 players. Bunkers are moved, tees are moved. Well, we don't want them to have to hit around that bunker. What is wrong with every once in a while, a shorter hitting player, a woman, a child, or whatever, having an opportunity to carry a bunker? Because there's a reward associated with that. I was at Cedarbrook the other day. One of the gentlemen we were interviewing with said, oh, they took out a bunker on number 9, uphill par 3. He says, my dad hit into that bunker every time he played. And he said, but they took it out. I said, well, what if it went back in? He says, oh, I think it'd be great. And I said, didn't your dad clear it every once in a while? He said, yeah, every once in a while he did. And I said, now how was he walking around that day? He says, a little bit taller, a little bit prouder. You know, why not put some of these things in that challenge everybody? Not on every hole, but at least give you an opportunity. How great is it? 16, the bunker on 16, how great is it to pop a ball right over that bunker and watch it just roll right down onto the green? There's a lot of satisfaction in that. Flynn knew that, and he wanted people to be able to feel that also. So, That's William Flynn and how he applied, and I hope with talking about his design principles, I hope that you can now go out on your golf course and you look at it a little differently. And you look at the greens and you know, now in your playing group, hey, look at Flynn, his 3 high points, and this and that, and they'll look at you like you're nuts. But at least you have something that you can talk about now and sort of spread some enthusiasm through the club. Personally for me, you know, Ron Forse and I have consulted probably over 180 golf courses now. Donald Ross, 55 Donald Ross golf courses, Tillinghast courses, Flynn, Allison. Personally for me, Allison, Charles Allison, and William Flynn are 2 of my favorites. If we have an opportunity to go after any one of those 2 courses, we jump at it. The reason for it being Flynn and Allison for me is Allison also had very similar design principles. Okay, they actually they never developed a partnership. They didn't talk to one another about this because basically Harry Colt sent Charles Allison over here to the U.S. to do the work. He didn't want to. Allison set up shop in Detroit. He didn't want to compete against Flynn and Tillinghast and Ross in this area, but they developed a good friendship. And so those 2 are probably my favorites personally. But there are a couple other things we might want to continue. You asked if I'd comment on these.
Yeah, well, one of the things I'd like to mention is that you know, Jim is involved with every material change we make to the golf course. We don't do anything at a board level or an officer level unilaterally without Jim's recommendation, his sign off. We actually have a greens subcommittee that Andrew runs that we need to sign off on as well as the golf committee and the officers. So things, no one person can make any significant changes to the course, but it starts with Jim. And he made a recommendation about the 6th hole that he's going to talk about now, which has gone through the greens subcommittee and has been approved, but I asked Jim just to comment on that.
Yeah. So in the history of the hole, I showed that photo earlier, and you can see how far out the stream was. So that stream just kind of continued to carry down through here. The pond was added, and obviously you now know the pond expansion has been completed. There used to be trees out in here. Okay, the comments and the questions really are in regards to the Finnegan tree, okay, and whether or not how does that come into play? How should it come into play? What are the thoughts on that? And the problem with the Finnegan tree that I have personally is that it negates the reward. The pond. If you play close to the pond, you are much worse off than somebody who decided to play over here and play as far away from the pond as possible. Plus, it's not just about playing. It's also about the cant of the fairway, because the cant of that fairway actually leads right to the pond. Things should drain downhill. So my experience last night, I thought I'd put the photo in. I actually hit a really good drive. I got to experience a number of things that you as members get to. Because I hit a really good drive, and it was on the right side. I was not in the hazard. I was still outside the paint. And I had to play a cut 5-iron around this tree. And I understand it's playing as it's a shortish par 5 for some, and let's go back to that whole notion about par 4, par 5, but that's something for another day. But my recommendation really is that tree should come down. To me, with the pond being expanded, especially now that the pond has been expanded also, there's no reward whatsoever for playing it over to that right side. And also, in fairness, because so many balls end up along that right side because of the slope of the fairway, I just think that the tree is too much. So my recommendation is for its removal. Interestingly enough, you can see this bunker, actually right there's the cavity for that bunker. This was widened out for the open right through there, and then there was a letter many years later. I'm thinking somebody on the board probably hit into it a lot. It says, if you remember, we widened the fairway bunker on number 6. Can we put it back to where it was? I think it's really good. The other thing, this particular green. So a little bit more about the history of the club, if you guys have a couple minutes. William Flynn designed the golf course, okay, and then in the early 30s, the club came back, and Pete, you were talking, you mentioned something about finding an article on this, and we have it in letters and things, but the club was not happy with the designs of the greens and the approaches. They felt like things were a little too difficult. Like, if I remember correctly, we had some drainage issues with some of the greens. They were not draining properly. So they rebuilt the greens. And they were still were not happy with them. So Flynn, to his credit, recommends bringing somebody else in. Perry Maxwell was doing work at Gulf Mills. Perry Maxwell did famous prairie dunes in Hutchinson, Kansas, and was a great designer. A lot of people thought he did some of the best green sites anywhere. So Maxwell comes in and rebuilds. His recommendation is to rebuild all of them. The clubs, there's no way we're rebuilding all the greens. Last year, I was on a tour here with Ron Whitten from Golf Digest. Ron and I toured Manny's, Lancaster, and Philly. And Ron is kind of an expert on Maxwell. And he walked up on the 6th hole. He says, first of all, he says, those 2 bunkers. He says, he did those 2 bunkers at such and such club with a stream cutting right in front, somewhere else in the Midwest. And then we started putting the green. He's like, this is a Maxwell green. He says, there's almost no doubt about it. I've seen this elsewhere. I think he also said, it was 13, 8, seemed to have a different feel about them. It seemed to be more of a Maxwell kind of green. There's no record that says exactly which greens were rebuilt. So, you know, if we were to ever do a detailed survey, have you done Easy Locator? No. So if you were to do Easy Locator and or more importantly, these 3D laser scans of the greens, I think we would get a better idea by looking at some of the contouring of maybe which greens were rebuilt. But even playing yesterday, they had a little bit different feel about them. So Maxwell came in, but then when it came time to prepare for the Open and make recommendations on the course, the club brought Flynn back in. I don't think Flynn was ever not involved. I think he felt, listen, I built the greens once, we rebuilt some of them again, and you're still not happy. You know what, I'm just gonna remove myself. You know, that's very respectful to do that. But then he comes back in. So I believe Flynn really was involved with the club from the inception, from the building of the golf course through till when he died in 1945. And then in the 50s, the Gordons take over, and the Gordons are the ones who designed your 18th hole. Okay? William Gordon worked, he really was Flynn's right-hand man. I think even more so than Dick Wilson and some of the other guys. David Gordon, his son, just passed away, I believe 2 years ago now. Very kind gentleman. After a while, he really didn't want to talk about golf anymore, David Gordon. He flew bombers in World War II, and he loved talking about that. But the golf stuff to him was not as important. If you caught him on a good day, he'd talk about Flynn and he'd talk about his dad. The other thing was that when the club started looking to move out here, they did commission 2 architects. And at that time, Colt literally was considered to be about the best architect in the world. And some people still consider, I was just listening to a podcast with Tom Doak the other day, and even Doak was saying that he truly believes of all the architects, Colt may have the most lasting effect or inspiration on designers because it went from Colt to Allison and then to Mackenzie, and so much of this these guys who were doing modern work were influenced by Mackenzie. But the club commissioned a number of architects to come and visit the property. You had Allison, you had Flynn, and then I believe there was even Travis. Walter Travis was commissioned to at least look at the property. And you know, obviously you settled on Flynn, which was the right decision. You have a phenomenal golf course. A couple other things that, yeah.
Here's a question, sorry, from a design perspective, the fairway bunker right fairway bunker on Forse, patch of grass in there. How do you feel about that? And is that seen other places
Yes.
on Flynn courses?
Yes. Yeah. Indian Creek, we have it. You could go back in the photos of other courses. It comes from Marion. Yeah. Inspired by Marion and Pine Valley.
That was original.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Those show up in the earliest photos. Yeah. So he did that in a lot of places, and I think without doubt it came from Marion and Pine Valley.
I think he had grass in the left green side bunker on 17 at one point too, though, right, Mike?
Yeah, that was ornamental type grass that was
Right.
removed.
Yeah. That would have been something added at a later
I
date.
think so.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about going
Please
back
ask
to
away.
the
Yeah.
tree on 6? philosophically, as a, you know, I'm not trying to differ with your recommendation, but would you say that the movement is more towards par fives being birdie or eagle holes for an under 10 handicapper, like giving them that opportunity every time? In other words, what I'm trying to say is, I'm a double-digit handicapper. If I'm going to par that hole, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to hit a hybrid or a 5-wood just to get over the creek, right? And then I'm going to hit a wedge into the green. Whereas a single-digit handicapper here, who's a little bit bigger hitter, if he hits a long drive to the right over by the water, if that tree's not there, I mean, he's in the go zone, like, without a problem at all. Like, I mean, so wouldn't you want to equalize the two players and make the lower handicapper play it as a 3-shot hole? Or do you just say that hole should be, you know, increase the differential? And you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
There's multiple
philosophically,
solutions. Yes.
I just am curious what
It is. I think it's good every once in a while for everybody to have that opportunity for either par or for even a better player to have that chance to go after it for eagle if possible.
I guess since
I
it's
think
our
the
number one
equalizer-
handicap, like in a
I think-
match, you guys got to make birdie, right? The low guy has to make birdie.
I think the equalizer on that hole also is the green. That's not the easiest green to putt.
Yeah.
You know,
It's probably a
we-
risk reward second shot for the low guy
And
too.
the other thing is, if we were to make any changes there, I mean, it starts with the tree. So the initial question, what do you think about the tree? The hole as it's designed right now, I believe it to be a nuisance. It fights the ground, it fights the strategies, it fights the pond. I just think it should go. That's sort of stage one. Play it for a year, okay? Then we might start making some recommendations up at the green. You know, a longer hitter, although there are better players, it's power, but a better player might be more accurate. But if they're going to miss, they might miss either long left or they might miss that flailing off a little bit to the right. Well, let's look at maybe making some adjustments there. Maybe the green needs to be expanded, or maybe the green needs to be modified slightly so we start getting more hole locations along the perimeter. So if you're going to go for it, now it's bringing the hazards closer into play. So right now is step one, and I agree with what you're saying, but I think there would end up being more layers to
You said that
this.
more just because you don't think the tree fits the view of the hole in the right place.
Well, then, Eric, if I could interject for a second, I think that the concept, the original concept of finishing hole was to protect against the long hitter that kind of bailed out on the right. It was able to carry, you know, the pond on the right-hand side and would basically go, to your point, unimpeded right to the green. The idea about expanding the pond up the right-hand side is now you've actually created a disincentive for that player, right? There is now a hazard there. And so now we're talking about literally a double hazard. So the concept, if the player wants to take that route and play to the right side of the fairway, you know, they should be rewarded for taking that risk. That's the concept of now why that Finnegan tree is not as relevant as it was.
I just want to be able to win the hole against somebody. That's
what
You're giving me a stroke anyway, it doesn't matter.
You have no idea how many times things in design boil down to, I lose money on that.
He's giving. I'm taking.
Really? Like Marion's number 2, and I've talked to her and I've talked to my dad about it. When you play number 2 and you go on the right-hand side, if you're a longer hitter, you can't hit the club you want to hit because the evergreens branches go into the fairway. And me as a golfer, I'm okay. I just think that honestly, you should not be penalized for being in the fairway. And I think that Finnegan tree impedes you in,
Even when you're on the
you're not rewarded if you hit the fairway. And I think that drives
Well,
me
if you
crazy.
put it in the wood, then double
Manny's-
penalty.
Manny's 7th used to be the best example of that. Because you could be literally in the fairway and right of center on that par 5, and you had no shot, none. You had to play way out left to come in. You could be in the fairway, and it was definitely a no-go. The tree management on a golf course, it never stops. You always have to be looking at it because the trees continue to grow. And again, just like Flynn said in 1927, they still haven't solved the ball issue.
Not to throw another tree issue, but the 4th hole here, the tree on the, to the right side, by the, not on the tee. the one that's, you know, that I guess provides some protection for the 12 tee. What do you think about that, Drew?
We have a couple holes that we almost have fun, if you,
Yeah.
especially playing the back tees, almost shoots coming out. The 16 is a good example.
16's a good
Or-
example.
And
Or
the question, I
16.
think we get complaints when we're back tees, like, geez, those trees, I mean, it affects me because I either draw, now I can't do it, and whatever. So that's 4 and 16, and
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any other.
16, 16 it used to be, but it was further out. Now it's back closer to the tee.
Feels like a canopy almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 is the most glaring example.
I'm sorry.
No, to that point, the 4, the tree on the 4 is.
Right between the two tee boxes, you know what I mean? Like,
It's a different.
Yeah, they continue to grow, you know, it's something that you guys have to evaluate and look at it and say, yeah, you know, I remember playing yesterday and I definitely felt that I was playing the blue tees, and so.
On the rights.
On
Down right
the
side.
right side,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jim, what are the, if money was no object, what are the top 1 or 2 things you would do to our course?
Your bunkers. The bunkers look really good. I'm walking away with this yesterday. We've been having so many conversations and we've got so much work going on Centennial. And I've been studying old photos because I want to get the bunkers on Centennial to look more like what they'll look like, you know, what they should look like over on Spring Mill. Playing yesterday, I just was like, wow, these are really, really good. They still look really good. And then I raked one of them and I pulled 2 staples out, and then, you know, so it's time for that. The technology of bunker construction has changed significantly, okay? I still think you need to continue to look at your tree program and see what trees, like, you know, we've got plans. They've been in place for a couple of years for the 5th hole to rebuild and expand, because you need more tee space there. But you get the ash trees, and you get the beech tree that's starting to narrow that hole again. You know, that's another example where you would be looking at trees. I think the other is to start looking at your fairway expansions, because the fairways were proposed to be expanded on a number of holes in the original master plan. It just never got implemented because it didn't fit the program at that time because of the irrigation system. Now your irrigation system is 22, 23 years old. You're gonna probably have to start looking at putting that onto some sort of plan in the coming years to replace that. You know, it used to be an irrigation system was good for 25 to 30. They're now designed with this HDPE to be good for 50 to 70. You know, the only thing that would be changing probably is head technology, so you might be changing out heads periodically. You know, Mike and I, and Forse Design is a team, and when we really started working with you guys, it really was Ron and I've just sort of have taken over management of the project. Ron and I are always talking about Philly. But when we did the green expansions, we had a great process going. So the greens have been expanded out almost as far as they should be. In fact, at that time, we were using Joe Dewich from Penn State. We would look at the architectural side. Mike would come back with Joe Dewich and look at what's below ground and where we should be expanding to. So those are all pretty good. I think the 18th hole is something that should be investigated. The 18th hole was a part of the redesign of the master plan. You know, because I know I've had numerous conversations with Janine about the 18th hole and the pool and things going on there and concerns for safety. Well, in 2000 and 2002, we had plans for a new 18th hole, which took that second shot and moved it away from the clubhouse. By the way, if anybody was having dinner last night, thank you, you made me terribly nervous in my bunker shot on 18, because the last thing I want to do was thin one out of that bunker. And,
Put it right in the souffle.
yes, so, but, you know, I think this is something that you need to be looking at is the 18th hole. And I even think that I would even modify it a little bit beyond this, just to get the tee shot even a little bit further left.
Did you move the green there too, or is that?
The green is moved. The green is moved on that. It basically, I believe it would be
Looks like.
center, if you take center of green now, that becomes left edge. And because the problem is that ground continues to fall, just like Flynn said, it's about visibility. So we want to make sure we be visible enough. Of course, you got a mountain of soil over there on the Centennial course, so we can raise the 18th green all we want. No, I think there could be some shifting of the 18th hole. Tees have not been looked at other than, you know, the master plan. Again, this whole thing with shorter courses and
Play it forward.
play it forward. A lot of clubs You know, your plan was done 17 years ago. You know, a lot of clubs that have plans that are 10 to 15 years old, we've been doing these master plan updates. You know, some say, there's some clubs that we literally we're doing and we're on, basically on retainer. So we go back every year, and it's not invalidating the plan by making more changes, it's actually confirming what's been done and making suggestions on, as things change, what else do we want to reconsider.
People have other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I think about this course, with the exception of holes number 2 and 5, you can run the ball on the green. Is that a Flynn characteristic
Yes.
of
Yes.
Very happy
The ground game.
Very happy to hear that. I guess I
Yeah,
can't
the
care.
ground game was much more prevalent back then.
So
okay?
instead of, you couldn't fly.
It was his associate Dick Wilson who, when somebody mentioned something at Pine Tree about the ground game, he says, if you want to play a game on the ground, go bowling. Golf's meant to be played in the air. And if you've ever played Pine Tree, every shot into pretty much every green is in the air. There's no run up out there. Flynn had that, and he was a master of that. If you just think about holes in the area, 12 and 14 at Manny's, with the way that balls rolled down onto that green.
16.
16 here, okay? And I think that was part of what Maxwell did, was he kind of adjusted and narrowed some of these approaches. But again, looking at the old photos and things like that, yeah, I definitely would love to see good firm approaches and wider approaches where the ground game is possible. And you know, hey, we all do. Every year we get a little bit older.
But
I love the opportunity to be able to play shots into greens, not necessarily shots onto greens.
But is it, for other Flynn courses, is it so prevalent?
Without question.
Okay, gotcha.
And 14 is a great example. That's the other, okay, so back to your question, what else? Okay, right now there's a trend in golf, and that is to be reinstating or adding these big roll-off areas. You know, we worked at Rolling Green for 13 years, they got a new superintendent, they made a change, hey, no problem. What I just found out recently was, you know, they did the 6th hole, but when they did the 6th hole, they added roll-off area that goes up onto a mound and then runs off the back left of 6th green all the way to 7T. That's like 30 yards away downhill. That to me is a bit excessive, but the next time you're playing, look on the left of 14, okay? 14 green, it's very gentle and it sweeps up. You actually used to be able to play a shot over that bunker on 14 and let that ball come down on. Okay, that would be the opposite. 7 at Rolling Green. We took trees out along the right side of 7 at Rolling Green and put a bunker in and then rolled all this fairway down, because that's what it was. That green falls away from you at 7 at Rolling Green. You had to play it short. That's the other thing, is looking at greens. If a green's falling away from you, these guys gave you the ability to play short and run it on.
Right.
13. Why not be able to get a shot in on the front right of 13 and let that trickle on? If you failed, you were in the bunker, and then you had the green falling away from you. So that's a great question, great question. There's one other thing I want to mention, and I don't even know what time it is, but so while I was out here with Ron Whitten, because I know one of the questions, and Scott said there were some Golf Digest raters out here and everything, you guys used to be ranked, okay? You were in Golf Digest Top 100, and this is the whole reason Ron Whitten and I did this tour last year, because it was the same thing for Lancaster. Lancaster's saying, well, we're doing all this work, we had this Women's Open, most successful Women's Open, why aren't we ranked? And I said, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to Ron Whitten. We had a town hall meeting. We did just what we did here, and then Whitten hates to talk, so I did all the presenting, and then we sat down, we had a bunch of questions. And that question came up, and Ron said, here's the thing. He says, a William Flynn golf course might be the best golf course in an area, but it's not the best looking golf course. It doesn't pop out at you. In other words, Golf Digest raters are shallow. Okay? Don't tell the guys that we're here, you know. They want the bells and whistles, you know. They get out on a golf course and they want things to just really be, just pop and this and that. Well, you guys have played here for how many years? You know how good this golf course is. But how many years did it take you to know how good this golf course was? Okay, Shinnecock, sure, Shinnecock pops out at you. You get on that first tee and you look out over that, you're like, oh my gosh, this is top 100, like that, okay? I always thought Oak Hill East was one of the most overrated courses anywhere, but they have this history. They've got the trees, and they've got the plaques, and they've got the recent this, and recent that. That resonates with people. Witten said the problem with this, and we were relating it to Lancaster, but again, we looked at Manny's, Philly, and Lancaster. He says, Flynn, you need to go back to that a second time. You need to go back to that a third time, because it grows on you. Where these other courses that get rated highly, especially with Golf Digest, is they've got this history that just wows people, okay? And they also have this course that when you walk out, oh, they spent this much money, therefore it must be great. Oh, who so-and-so renovated this? It must be great. You guys really don't have to do, you know, they said it at cricket, you know, it was restored, but yet, well, we know that the architect did a lot of his own things on the greens. You don't really need to do much on your greens. They're good greens. They're fascinating. You know, the one thing about Flynn, we talked about the 3 high points. The thing about Flynn and his greens is apparent simplicity, okay? You look at your greens and think, these are gonna be easy to putt. They are not. I had a putt on 16 from above the hole. Why did it break towards the hill? It's not supposed to break towards the hill, it's supposed to break the other way. You know, so Flynn's greens were apparent simplicity and actual complexity. That doesn't resonate with people. They don't have the big rolls and they don't look like Mackenzie Augusta greens. They're plain. But boy, when you putt them, they're great. We spent, when Witten and I were here, the pin on 6 was right side below the slope. We spent half an hour trying to find an area that was 1.5 inches wide where the ball just died enough and rolled down and went into the hole. We couldn't find it. And we were just absolutely perplexed and loving every second of it. You know, you don't get that if you don't play a place often enough. And so,
Well, thank you, Joe. Anybody has any individual questions, feel free to, you know,
Yeah.
get them afterwards. But thanks, everybody, for coming. We really
This is
appreciate it.
good.